I grew up lucky. I recognize I was lucky. There is not a single Gold Star son or daughter from the Vietnam era, not a single Gold Star son or daughter from the Iraq or Afghanistan era that got as lucky as me. And as I pursue public service, I recognize that it should not take a stroke of good luck or just being born in the right zip code that dictates where you end up in this country. The great promise, the singular promise of this country is the equality of opportunity. That's what we strive for. That's indeed why I recognize that people like me have a responsibility to stand up in times like this and afford opportunity and do better than not just represent the wealthy and wealthy. So I also had a great grandfather, Jay Phillips, who taught me the most important lesson in my life. He said, Dean, money is like manure. If you stack it up, it stinks. But if you spread it out, it fertilizes. I think that's one of the greatest truths in the world. We got plenty of it. We're just not spreading it out in a way that's fertilizing. And I think that in business, I think that in philanthropy, and I sure as heck think that in the United States Congress and when I'm president. So anyway, I grew up in this wonderful family, all these blessings. I graduated University at Brown. I joined a startup company for 2 years. By the way, this is the most extraordinary startup I've ever participated in, you can imagine. Early stage. And loved that. And then I joined our family business. We were in the distilling business. We introduced Belvedere vodka. Any martini lovers? We built that brand. We sold it. Then we entered the ice cream business. Any Talenti gelato fans in the house? I never know what the most important laugh line or excitement is.
Hey, everybody. You rock, everybody.
Yeah, we do.
I want to share with you my vision for America.
In any case, so we sold Talenti. What's your favorite flavor, by the way? Let me hear it.
What's yours?
Oh, it's mine. Oh, I like that. See? I like Cookie Crunch and pistachio.
Yeah.
I used to say vanilla, and then people said, Dean, that makes you look milk toast, So anyway, and by the way, there's a connection here. I like disrupting categories that have two big brands that have lost sight of what the customer really wants. It was Absolute and Stoli with Belvedere, it was Ben & Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs with Talenti, and now it's Democrats and Republicans. So, my family and I are watching the 2016 election. I'm Lise, my mom, my brother, kids, and I was shocked. I mean, it was the first time in my life I really felt this country change and take a very dark turn, for which very few of us, I think, were prepared and anticipated. But I remember that night after the returns were pretty clear, I told my family, you know what, give him a chance. We can't start a new presidency, no matter your politics, by condemnation. Got to give him a chance. And of course, I did, and it was a bad one. But I'll tell you, what really was painful was waking up the next morning. First thing I heard is my daughter, Pia, crying in her bedroom. She was 16. She had just recovered from Hodgkin's lymphoma. A tough couple years for our family and her, of course. And she's a gay woman. And I didn't know that when she was 16, but I saw something in her eyes. Some of you may have had the same experience that jarred me, that really made me concerned about her future. And I know, as a person of privilege, how lucky we are. I know many kids wake up every morning with that fear in their eyes, but for me, it was a very indelible, jarring moment. So I sat at the breakfast table with my daughter Pia. We FaceTimed Daniela, who was at college, and I promised them right there that I would do something. I raised them to be participants, not observers. And in America, you stand up. You stand up and meet the moment. If your mittens weren't on, it would be a much better clap. Never clap with mittens. So I decided, we had just opened some coffee shops. I think the solution, by the way, to our greatest problems is just finding places for people to gather and get to know each other, space and place. Don't let angertainment, like I said, on the screens tell us we're divided. Let's get off the screens and have coffee. So we opened a few coffee shops. Gave that up. I decided I'd run for Congress. I talked to my family. I talked to my friends, the people I trust the most. I'm like, what do you think about this? They said, Dean, you're out of your mind. Why would you want that? Why would you try to take on a candidate who just won by 14 points? Why would you run in a district that has not elected a Democrat since 1958? I said, that's exactly why. That's exactly why. And I did. And we put together the most extraordinary team. We call ourselves the Dean team. We call our younger people the Dean's List, so they're all invited. That was the best way to, in fact, some put it on their resumes, and I think it's confusing, but that's But I say this because I'll tell you, when you come from the business world, which I wish more politicians did, I think you know pretty intuitively that if you start an enterprise by condemning 50% of your potential customers, it's not a really good strategy. In fact, it's a really stupid one, and that's exactly what politicians use every day. So I did it differently. I used invitation instead of confrontation. I bought a 1960 International Harvester Metro van. We call her the government repair truck. Many think it should be a lot bigger considering the task, but the truck's in Manchester right now with some engine trouble. I drove that thing around. I put out chairs, served some coffee, and literally just invited people to come talk. Tell me what's on your minds. I got to meet Democrats and libertarians, independents, Republicans. I heard the most beautiful stories, the most heartbreaking stories, and it was the most extraordinary experience of my life until the last 90 days here in the Granite State. But I discovered that the best way to do this is to represent everybody, not just Democrats. So I won by 12 points, flipped it by 26, which was a pretty good achievement. Come to Washington, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, 2019. I think Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy, I think they're going to sit us down and have a little dinner and get to know each other, tell our life stories, and do a ropes course and build some trust. My goodness, my friends, none of it. I was shocked. They put us on different buses, going to different events. The systemic separation is manifest in the very institution that is supposed to be doing just the opposite. And I thought, you know what, I got to do this differently. So Annalise and I, we started hosting bipartisan dinners for our colleagues to get to know each other. Many of whom, by the way, many of my Republican colleagues have been so generous with their reach out over the last 90 days. Birthday wishes yesterday, go get them, love the courage. Wish we had people on our side that would do it, that kind of thing. And we built friendships, both of us. I joined the Problem Solvers Conference. Any of you familiar with the Problem Solvers? Yeah. I wish this whole audience would clap at that, because the fact that you don't know them, I'll tell you that, us, you don't know them because we're the workhorses. We're not the show horses. We're not playing this stupid game of getting on TV. Let me tell you, I could be very well known right now if I was just willing to be a total jerk, But being unknown as you start a presidential campaign is a huge blessing. No one talks about it because 2/3 of the country does not hate me yet. It's true. We're the problem solvers because we actually work together. We trust each other. We get to know each other. We're friends from all around the country. And we understand that if we don't find solutions, we're in big trouble. Now, you don't hear about us because it's really hard in Congress to even put solutions on the floor, because you have gatekeepers, the leaders on each side, that don't want oftentimes to solve the problems. You go to the White House. In fact, Donald Trump invited me to the White House in 2019 because we had a proposition to get through the shutdown, which actually worked. So that's how we do that. I joined the Modernization Committee because we actually have a committee trying to improve how Congress works. If you can believe this, when I got there in 2019, remember, honey, they gave me a pager. Now, again, some of you in this room have never even heard of what those are. Yeah, oh my goodness, yeah. A pager. I mean, which, let me tell you, never was used, but that's a metaphor for what Congress is like right now. What the heck? So I joined the Modernization Committee. We made some improvements. In this past session, I was elected by my peers to join the House leadership table, along with Hakeem Jeffries. The first time we had a new set of leaders in 20 years. Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, Steny Hoyer. These people stick around a little while. And it was joyful to serve as a House Democratic leader, one of 10 people out of 210. But then I saw something really disturbing start happening. I was trapped in the House chamber on January 6th, 2021. I wanted to be there to bear witness to one of the most important moments in American democracy, the counting of the ballots. Something to witness, to watch, to treasure. And I watched the president's speech beforehand in my office, and it was appalling. I walked across the street, sat down with 20 of my colleagues in the House gallery. Remember, this is in the middle of COVID. Watched the proceedings. My family then started texting me, saying, "Everything okay?" I said, "Of course it's okay. I'm watching the proceedings." They're like, "No, I don't know. Do you know what's going on outside?" No. So a friend of mine, Tom Malinowski from New Jersey, we walked outside of the chamber, looked at our window, and a U.S. Capitol police officer screamed at us using a swear word, saying, "Get the you know what away from the window," screamed at us, "Get the heck back inside the chamber." But what we saw was horrifying. All of them walking up, starting to fight with our officers who were completely ill-prepared and under-equipped, and it was shameful. So we got back in the chamber, and at that moment, they removed Nancy Pelosi. They slammed the doors, put furniture in front of them to try to block them. They told us to immediately put on our gas masks, take cover behind the chairs, and seek something to defend ourselves. And you know all we had? The only thing we had is pens and pencils. That's all we had. And those 20 minutes we were trapped, let me tell you, for those of you who've been through trauma before, you know it's not about what happens after. It's it's that fear, thinking that these are your last 15 minutes of life. My colleagues crying, most of them calling home and texting to say goodbye, many of them in prayer. And just through a twist of fate, we were able to escape. I'm going to tell you another story. I don't say it much, but I screamed at my colleagues to let's run to the other side of the chamber, because I thought if we could go to the Republican side, we could blend in, and the insurrectionists who were clearly coming after we Democrats would mistake us, right? But I then saw my colleagues of color with whom I was sitting, and I recognized at this moment that they couldn't blend in. They were wondering if they should leave these little pins on that identify us to the police officers, or take them off so they could not be identified by the insurrectionists. And I'll tell you, we all maybe reached this moment at some point. For me, it was when I was 52 years old at that moment on January 6th, where I really recognized what that all meant, what privilege meant, in a really profound way. And when we finally did make it across that side, we walked across the hallway, saw the rioters with their face down with long guns pointed at them, told to get in an elevator to take it to the tunnel, to run across under the streets to the safe room. They told us to push the sub-basement level, that's where the tunnels are. And we get in the elevator, and one of my newly elected Republican colleagues, a friend, pushes floor 1. And I got to tell you, those 15 minutes were long, but even longer were those 6 seconds, going from the second floor to the first floor. Thankfully, there was nobody there when those doors opened. We run across the hallways to the safe room, and I'm standing next to Liz Cheney, about 20 of us in a room, TV on the wall, waiting for our president. I'm going to talk about it. That's why I'm digressing. We're watching a TV screen, 20 of us, probably half Democrats, half Republicans, waiting for our president to stop this, waiting for him. He finally comes on. Liz Cheney points at that screen and says, "He's responsible, we're going to hold him accountable." And I'll tell you, every single one of us, it was the only time in the U.S. Congress where I really felt that we were one team. Every Democrat, every Republican, we applauded her. We resolved right then and there that we will get back in that chamber tonight and finish the job. And I saw principle on display in a way I'd never seen it before. I didn't know her well at the time. She was the third ranking member of the House Republican Conference leadership team, the most conservative member of the Republican Party in the House, according to the Heritage Foundation, and not someone I knew. But what I saw happen over the next number of months is she was excommunicated from her leadership post. She was basically thrown out of her party. She started hanging out on our side of the aisle. We got to know each other a little bit. And I did an advertisement for Liz Cheney in her last primary in Wyoming in 2022. She knew she was going to lose, but she had the courage of conviction to put her principles and our country over her party. The audacity to actually protect the Constitution to which we took an oath. And I thought I could do something. And I shared this story with you because what she did was what inspired me to do what I am doing now, because her party was saying the same thing about Donald Trump quietly, about his grotesque nature, about his incompetence, about his danger. And then they'll get in front of cameras, including many of them who are here right now in New Hampshire, lying. In front of the cameras, they're all in on Trump. And it appalled Liz Cheney. She was one of 10 Republicans who had the audacity to vote to impeach him because that's what was the right thing to do. 9 of them didn't make it back to Congress. So people in Congress, they see what happens when you are actually principled. There's no reward. So what do? They act like sheep. My side of the aisle, same thing started happening. Now look at Joe Biden's a good man, a man of decency and integrity. There's no equivalency between him and Donald Trump. I hope you all know that. Please. But my colleagues started to see the same thing, the decline that you have seen. You know, it's real. He's a human being. We started seeing the polls shift. We started seeing his approval numbers drop. And we started recognizing that, you know what, Donald Trump may well come right back to the White House. And we were all talking about it. But then the cameras would come on, and my colleagues would say something totally different. And I thought, my goodness, this disease was now contagious on my side of the aisle too, which is people literally lying in the spirit of self-preservation versus principle. I literally left the House Democratic leadership table. I resigned because it was so incongruent with my principles. I'd seen Liz Cheney stand up for principle, and I thought my time is right now too. So I called on the president to pass the torch. It was the right thing to do. He would. He should not be running. It is a danger to the country to run when you are knowingly going to lose to one of the most dangerous people in the world. He should cement his legacy, is what I said. He's done a fine job. But don't be Ruth Bader Ginsburg and stay around a little too long and ruin your whole legacy, not to mention the possible freedoms that will be withdrawn by him losing. But he didn't leave. So I started calling on those whose names are better known than me. Gretchen Whitmer, someone I admire. J.B. Pritzker, someone I admire. Join the race. Be a Democrat. Enter the primary. That's what you do. But they wouldn't do it. In fact, when I called them, their political people only took the call. They wouldn't. And they told me, don't use their names. That's how pathetic we find ourselves in this situation. So they wouldn't do it. So I became frustrated. I thought, my goodness, if not now, when? And if not me, who? And my goodness, 2 weeks before the filing deadline, I decided we're going to do this. I had 2 weeks free. This is going to sound bizarre. 2 weeks free. You know why? Because Kevin McCarthy lost his job and my Republican friends could not find a replacement for him, and we had nothing to do. So I gathered a ragtag group at our house in Washington, and we literally put together a presidential campaign in 2 weeks. Now, mind you, not with Democratic consultants, because they get blackballed if they would be someone that might help my campaign. Not with one person working on our campaign who has to use a pseudonym for fear, I'm not even going to say if it's a he or she, but for fear that after this, they would be blackballed. That's how pathetic it is. But we came here on October 27th. I signed those documents with Annalise and my family at your state house in Concord. That alone, the most extraordinary tradition I've ever seen in my life. And I became a candidate for president. You know why? Because I'm 35 years old. I was born in the United States, and I brought a $1,000 check to your state house. So, and you know, this isn't easy. I knew I'd come up here and nobody would know who I was, and if we could get 5 people to sit at a table, it'd be a miracle, and my goodness, that's how it started. But I gotta tell you, look at this. Look at the last few days, what has transpired. If you pound the pavement in the United States, if you keep on keeping on, if you're decent, respectful, willing to face voters, anything is possible. And for our whole tradition, it has started right here. So I want to thank you for that. Because but for you, nobody like we could even stand a chance at succeeding. And we're going to do it. So I'm going to close with this. This is not just about beating Donald Trump and that Joe Biden is not electable. This is about doing this all differently. Decency, respect, integrity, competency. I'm going to have a bipartisan cabinet. I'm going to have the best and brightest Americans, no matter their politics, in the White House. I want a team of rivals. You know how boring life would be with people who all see things the same way? My goodness. Oof. The other thing is I want a youth cabinet. I want a high school student or college student from every one of our 50 states of integrity. I want a diversity of opinion and background. Because I can tell you, people in their 80s, people who have been politicians their whole lives, I'm sad to say this, but they don't understand artificial intelligence. They don't understand social media regulation. They don't understand how we can actually accomplish what we need to and also protect us from some really dangerous technologies coming down the pipeline. I'm going to also employ zero-based budgeting. I think our spending and management are out of control. It's nonsensical. I'm a proud fiscally responsible Democrat. In fact, the last Democrat to actually run the government in a responsible manner was Bill Clinton. I'm going to make sure that Pentagon passes an audit for the first time. I'm going to encourage our federal administration, both the administration and the Congress, to provide resources to have an international consulting firm conduct an assessment of every agency, every program, every expenditure, and make recommendations to all of us about how we can deliver services better, spend less, and do more. Part of it with artificial intelligence, which is going to reduce costs for Americans. It's going to generate better outcomes, and it should be managed in a way that the nefarious use cannot harm us. But it is coming, my friends. It's already here. This administration and past ones have done nothing because they don't get it. Cryptocurrency, same thing. They are waiting to be regulated because Congress and the administration don't get it. So I'm going to do it differently. And policy-wise, we have a crisis of costs and we have a crisis of chaos. Let me just start with education. Why are we burdening young people in this country with $1.7 trillion in debt, spending $90 billion a year on interest, when we are the country that should be promoting self-sufficiency, encouraging education? Instead, we put weights around the necks of young people trying to begin their careers, and we charge them higher interest rates than car loans. Nonsense, not when I'm president. How can we, the United States of America, tolerate the fact that 500,000 of our neighbors are sleeping outside every night? I knew we had a problem in San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, but let me tell you, spending the last 70 or so nights in Manchester and around your state, seeing veterans sleeping in Veterans Park, it's atrocious. It's a shame. We need to build 7 million homes in this country. Multifamily, apartment buildings, small homes, neighborhoods, maybe even cities. And I'll tell you, it's not rocket science. We know how to produce in this country, but we have zoning laws and local regulations that literally make it impossible. We can fix that. And lastly, healthcare. 25 million of our neighbors have no health insurance whatsoever. None. 90 million underinsured. People who, when you get sick, you think you have coverage, and then you get these tens of thousands of dollar invoices, surprise billings in the mail, which is why 66% of bankruptcies in our country right now are from medical debt. What's wrong with us? You know what's wrong? We allow pharma companies to bring $300 million a year to Washington. They shovel it into the pockets of candidates and members of Congress. They shovel it into the pockets of lobbyists, that is like an army on Capitol Hill. And they influence legislation generally to simply maintain the status quo. That's the only explanation for this nonsense, which is why I'm proud to be the only member of Congress who takes no PAC money, corporate or otherwise. But that's not all. That's not all. No PAC money, no lobbyist money. I don't take money from members of Congress, and I don't give money to members of Congress. It's just a shell game and money laundering. And then lastly, fifth, I'm one of the only ones that has no leadership PAC, which is just a slush fund for politicians to use it as they wish. I'm the only one out of 535 that can tell you those 5 things. The only one. So why do you think we have this problem? Why are we a country that has legalized corruption, where you can give me $5,000 in an envelope at a steakhouse in Washington, and then when I'm sitting in my congressional seat in a committee of jurisdiction over your enterprise, you look me right in the eye and wink? That's how this works. Everybody's being bought and sold because the whole game is money. 10,000 hours per week. 10,000 hours per week is how much time members of Congress are spending raising money. You know who they're raising it from? Not people struggling, the wealthy and the well-connected. The fact is, I know this because I'm one of them. I used to be the one that got all those phone calls. In fact, I ran for Congress in no small part to end those phone calls. They don't call me for donations anymore because they know I don't give them. I say that because I'm discovering the truth. So what happens when you're spending 10,000 hours per week raising money from wealthy people in Washington and around the country? You know what happens? Even if you're a good person, you don't spend time with all the other people that matter, that are really struggling, 60% of whom are living paycheck to paycheck, 40% of whom can't afford a $400 emergency in the United States of America in the 21st century. That's the problem. So I got to tell you, the last 90 days, spending it with all of you and so many of your friends and neighbors around the state, it has been eye-opening and heartwarming and very upsetting to see the struggle of so many people. And I wish my colleagues would spend more time doing that than raising money from the wealthy. So that's what we got to do. Food is too expensive. Fuel is too expensive. Chaos at our southern border. I'm a Democrat telling you the truth. It is an unmitigated, embarrassing disaster. And Democrats should also own it. It's a failure of the Republican and Democrats for years. Why don't we solve it? Because actually solving problems is not politically advantageous. Not when I'm president. I'm sick of it. We also have chaos in many of our cities. We have chaos around the world, wars in the Middle East, wars in Ukraine against Russia. It is feeling uncomfortably and unsafe right now for way too many Americans. And it's solvable. And that's why I'm running for president. I see how to change this, but we're not going to change it with someone who's only willing to do what the party wants. I acknowledge I have center-left ideas and center-right ideas. Healthcare, by the way, as I spoke about earlier, we need national health insurance. Simple. It's the most moderate centrist position I might have. Why? Because it's going to save us money, save us lives, finally establish a mental and emotional health care system so we can end diseases of despair, stop gun violence, make sure young people grow up happy and healthy and secure, and if not, we have a place to go. I ride with police officers all the time. Every single ride along I do, they say the same thing. Every time we go to an emotional health crisis, we have nowhere to take the patient. And if we find somewhere, they're right back the next day without any follow-up care. It's ridiculous. National health insurance will literally save us trillions of dollars a year, modest investments up front, saving us tons of money down the road. We're spending $12,000 per person in this country. Double any country in the world. Our outcomes are mid-pack. When I'm president, there's not going to be a pharma company that will sell their products in our country for a penny more than they do to the Canadians, the Mexicans, the Spanish, the Australians, and the Japanese. And believe it or not, just yesterday, the New York Times published an article, we pay 100% more than all of our peers for pharmaceuticals, right? Believe it or not, if we paid the same as everybody else, that would provide $250 billion a year. Add that to about the $50 billion a year that health insurance companies generate in net income every year. That's the $300 billion we need to cover everybody. Nobody would pay a penny more, and we'd start actually reducing our costs. So, I think, and a lot of journalists will say, those are progressive policies. I say, no, those are the most centrist, reasonable, common sense policies. They're positioned and branded as such because both sides need to try to take ownership on one side or the other. So look, I'm common sense. I wish we had a common sense party. That's what I'm trying to make we Democrats, because that was the last chance to do it, actually, everybody. So look, I'm Dean Phillips. I did not intend to do this 4 months ago, but only in the United States of America can someone who works their tail off and earn a little bit of opportunity. By the way, not everybody's in the same position to do so, but only in this country can you do that. And only in this country could an unknown congressman from Minnesota who said, I'm not going to sit down in 2016 and watch this country be taken over and hijacked by a madman. Only in this country can that guy appear in front of you and say, I'm running for president, and in 2 days, you have a chance to change the whole world. So it's up to you. And I'll leave it at that. If you like the status quo, by all means, write in Biden. You've got that choice. He should be on the ballot, for God's sakes, But conversely, if you want to say, you know what, I think we can do this better. I think in America, if we could wake up the next morning after that election and say, my goodness, something might be possible. Not just because Democrats won, but because a common sense president will be coming to the White House. So my next birthday is January 20th, 2025. And I'd love it if you might show up to my inauguration and celebrate with me. I love you, everybody. Let's do this. Let's hit the chairs. Let's do it for everybody. I love you all. And now,